So, here we are, and this is Preston.
Hello,
Preston, where are you from?
I'm from Anchorage, Alaska.
Anchorage, Alaska. And what school do you go to?
Grace Christian, Alaska.
Grace Christian. And how are you doing with the virus thing and being away from school?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. What's the best part?
That if my homework was easy, I could do my whole school in just probably 30 minutes.
Okay. So let me ask you the hard question. What's the worst part?
That is hard. I can't say school because I have to respect school.
Do you miss school?
Yes.
You miss your friends?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? That's what I hear from my students, is
Yeah.
that they all miss school.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The hard thing is probably this.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. Why don't you go ahead, and I'm gonna read this next chapter, and you can go climb over there, and they're gonna They're gonna pay more attention to you than they are to me. But I'm gonna read anyway. How's that work?
Yeah, see.
Okay. Let's do it.
No.
Let's do it.
Um,
What?
did we order a pizza?
Okay. All right. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Chapter 2.
Watch this.
The growth of capitalism. Capitalism, kind of like economics, we're going to use that as money or whatever else. When it all began, it was simple. Our neighbor's house had a larger yard than ours with what looked like good grass. No difficult corners, just a big square with a large elm tree in the center. I mowed it, and he gave me money, $20. Figuring that, I used almost all the gas in the tank, about a gallon, which cost $3, and not counting the wear and tear on the mower, I didn't know how to figure that out yet, I made $17 for my work. It took 2 hours, so I made $8.50 an hour. That, I was to learn later, was called capitalism. While I was finishing up the lawn next door, the neighbor came up from the block and said, "How much to mow my lawn?" Wow, another job, just like that. I poked around in our garage and found an old 3-gallon gas can. I walked to the station on the corner, bought gas, brought it back, filled the tank, and mowed the second guy's yard. And while I was doing that, a third man came to ask me to mow his lawn. The lawns kept getting bigger, and soon it was dinner time, and I'd done 3 lawns, and I'd made $60, and I had a small piece of scrap paper with phone numbers and addresses for 6 more lawns. Turns out the man who owned the lawn service that had done all the yards in our neighborhood had run off with the wife of one of his customers, and all the husbands were worried about hiring a new company after what had happened. A kid like me mowing their lawns wouldn't be much of a threat, I suppose. Plus, I was cheap. Later, I would learn that I had tapped into something called an expanding market economy. All I knew was that it felt good to have all that money in my pockets. And that evening, I took a rag and wiped the mower down, parked it in a corner of the garage, and, little admission here, patted it on the top of the gas tank. As I bent over, the wads of bills cracked in my pockets. "Thanks, Grandpa." I never really knew my grandfather, but the mower seemed tough and friendly. Maybe it was like him. He'd worked on it and used it, and it was nice to think of him as part of it. And then I went inside, and a strange thing happened. My parents were getting food on the table, and as we sat down to eat, my dad said, "That new film about astronomy is on at the IMAX." Excuse me. "It would be great to see it." He sighed, and I knew he was thinking about our budget. And I sat there. My pockets were full of money, and I could have said, "No problem, I got money, and I'll earn more money tomorrow and more money the day after that," but I kept my mouth shut. I could have said all those things, but nothing came. Something didn't feel right for me to be the one offering to take all of us to the movies. If I did that, wouldn't Dad feel worse? wouldn't it sound like I was bragging? I ate my meatloaf and green beans and then went into the living room, watched a little television, or tried to. I still had the sound of the mower in my ears, so I couldn't hear the set. And my whole body was still vibrating from sitting on the mower all day. After a few minutes, I couldn't keep my eyes open. By 8 o'clock, I was sitting on the couch with my head hanging down, for drool dripping onto my t-shirt, sound asleep. Mom shook me awake and sent me up to bed, where I crashed on the pillow, still dressed, pockets full of bills, end of day one, with my lawnmower, and that was the easiest day. Excuse me. Chapter 3, the law of increasing product demand versus flat production capacity. Oh, this is an economic term. If we were in economics, we'd be using some graph or chart or something like that that talks about product demand. So how many people want something, and then flat production capacity, how can you provide that? If you got 1,000 people that want something, but how can you provide that for someone? That's what we have happening here. There was a second then, or a minute, or maybe even a day when things could have remained sort of normal. The next day I moved the mower farther into the richer part of the neighborhood where the lawns began to get larger while my mower seemed to get smaller. Of course it didn't really, but that's how it felt. And soon it became obvious that I could only do three or four lawns a day. Oh my gosh. 3 or 4 lawns a day if I worked from just before dawn to just after dark. And while it's true that owners of the larger lawns paid me more, I was getting $30 to $40 a lawn the second day. There was also the distance factor. I had to ride the mower from lawn to lawn, and as I moved further from our house, that meant it would take me longer to get home at night, putt-putting down the edge of the street on the mower. Plus, I had to stop every few hours to buy more gas, and that really chewed up my time even more than the bigger yards. Great mower, small tank. I must have been the only kid my age in what felt like a 10-block radius who hadn't signed up for sleepaway summer camp, or who wasn't on baseball and or swim and or tennis teams that summer. I was burned out on sports after spring baseball league. All the older guys had real jobs like at the Clucket Bucket or the Dairy Whip, and all the guys my age were mostly busy or gone, so I had a long summer full of nothing ahead of me. Almost as if I'd known things were going to work out that way, which, of course, I hadn't. More and more people wanted their lawns mowed. On the second day, I had 8 jobs, and in fact, that was me fast approaching my limit. So again, this is just a silly book. It's just kind of fun, and it's probably not something that would really happen, but what would happen if you actually got out there with a lawnmower and started mowing lawns and making money, and who knows, huh? And any minute now, Mrs. Gustkey's going to push that button again, and we're going to be done. Ha! Ha! You did it first time? Nice!
So, I explained to her that you're putting this on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that Preston will be on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that was okay with her.
Oh.
It is okay with her.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
but.
We talked.
Yeah. Actually, we could let you know how to watch it. Can we send it to her? I don't know how to do this. I'm not a YouTube person.
The tags that I put on there are Mike Gustkey, Mr. Gustkey, KMS, and with this one it'll be lawnmower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So is Sarah in your class? She lives right up the road. What's her last name?
Who?
She's in my phone as Sarah Lawn Girl. Because she came to your book reminded me of her. She came to my door 2 years ago now, 3 years ago this summer, and said, "Do you need your lawn mowed?" Heck yeah. and she's amazing.
Sarah.
Sarah. She has a hyphenated last name, and they're both really short. Anyway, she's fabulous.
You know what? I address most of my students by their last name, so I have a really hard time with first
Remembering
names.
their first name?
Yeah.
Would be Ms. something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have her in my phone as Sarah Lawn Girl,
Oh, I like that.
and I tease her all the time because I'm like, you know, 'cause- so she came across as so mature that I said, do you want to ride the lawn?